Hey guys, Bricksettet here, and today I want to remake one of my older videos that it's a more popular video on my channel. I guess there's just a lot of interest in this topic, and I've never really seen anyone else try to do it before. So I'm going to try to remake it today just to, one, improve the result of what I'm doing, and also uh, just to kind of update the quality of the video a little bit because it does not match up to my current standard, if you will. And what that is we're going to make a character card for JDX. Now, JDX himself only came in two sets, Lightning Dragon Battle and Skeleton Bowling, and the spinner only came in Skeleton Bowling. So that's what we have here. Looks like that. It must have been a North American thing to have the red bottom, because I know in some pictures it's gray. I'm not sure what's up with that. I'm also just going to replace the bottom here with a red bottom to match the other DX Ninja a little bit better. So there's the spinner there. So why do we need to make a card? Well, that set never came with any cards for JDX. Now, a set like Mountain Shrine, which is where KaiDX comes from, that did include a set of cards for that character, but JDX was just early and it was like a retailer exclusive. So there's probably a lot of reasons why they just kind of forgot to include cards or chose not to. But they didn't, and JDX is one of two characters from that original year to not include a character card, the other being Samukai. But he has 4 arms, so I guess that one makes a little bit more sense. But so here's the original card that I made, and you'll notice that there's some problems with it, mostly coming from it's kind of super low res, and I don't really like that, so I want to fix it. I think part of the reason it's so low res is just the source images that I was using weren't particularly high res, so we might have to go kind of get our source images ourselves, which is sort of what we did last time. But I also brought up some bricks here in an L. These came in like every spinner, just to hold up cards and stuff. I'm not going to include these two pieces that came with ColdDX and ZaneDX because I don't know. I'm just imagining that there would have been a card in this set which came out in January of that year, and those extra clips only came in the spring spinners. So JDX just wouldn't have any because Skeleton Bowling was a January release. For his weapon, obviously he's going to have the nunchucks of lightning. Lego kind of backed themselves into a corner, giving Zane the shurikens as his golden weapon, like OG Zane golden weapon shurikens, which so then they gave him this chain thing for Zane DX, which is a little bit weird. That actually will come to our advantage. But for this, I do want to just give him the nunchucks, and I could give him the like legacy style nunchucks with the new dragon hilts, but that's not super accurate. So we're going to go old school today, and we are going to give him some original 2011 nunchucks with that piece for the hilts. And yeah, so that's his golden weapon. And then I'm also going to include this halberd from Skeleton Bowling. And the other weapons in that set are really, really long. But I am going to give him just a regular silver sword also from that set. So those are his 3 weapons. So now let's talk about the cards and the source material. Let's talk about what cards he might come with for a second. So these are almost the same as my picks from the last video with one exception. So a trend I've noticed with the DX Ninja is that they'd kind of like really focus on their element and then come with like one card from something else. So I just opted for ice here. I don't know why. And so we have Twister because it's like kind of a, I don't know, it's a Twister, you know, and this is like JDX. So like this is probably a super powerful card. Not really, but like, I don't know. Just seems like it. And then we have Finders Keepers, which is the only card to actually feature JDX in it. So there. And then we have Force Field because it features J. I used to throw Karate Chop in here, but I use Force Field because it has a higher SP, and I don't know. It utilizes the blocks that we're giving him, so I don't know. And then Card Freeze. So yeah, these are his cards. So let's talk about the stats of his cards. So these are the other DX Ninja, and basically what you'll see is that their main element they have 500 of, so they've maxed out Coal, Earth, Kai, Fire, Zane, Ice, 500. Then they also only have 100 of their like opposite elements, so fire and ice are opposite here. So Kai has one ice, Zane has one fire, so Cole has one lightning, so Jay would have one earth. Flay. So we know that Jay would have 500 lightning because it's the lightning main, and then you would have 100 earth. Where it gets weird is these other two elements. So for Zane, let's see, he has 300 lightning and 200 earth, versus Kai, who is Zane's opposite, has 300 earth and 200 lightning. So basically they're opposites like that, where they have sort of a secondary and then a tertiary, I guess, let's say. So Kai's secondary would be earth versus Zane's secondary is lightning. So if we look at Cole's secondary would be ice, and then Cole's tertiary would be fire. So then if we're going to sort of inverse that, then Jay would have 200 ice and then 300 fire. So these are his stats that we're going to be using. Now some other things to consider. All of these cards have a name, they have the total SP value, and they have a image of the golden weapon, they have their element, and then they have a ninja mask if they're a ninja, or a skullkin mask if they're skeleton. They have a number, they have this number, which is kind of an element ID for Lego, and then they have, the copyright information. The other thing is that you'll notice our golden weapon of choice here is these nunchucks, which look awfully close to Zane's there. And this is nice because what I can do in order to replicate this on Jay's, which is what I did last time, I'm just going to actually use Zane's, but then just sort of move the copy the hilt over and put it underneath that stud there so that you got the whole thing there. Then if we're basing that off of, I need to change the color of this, which I can just get from like the normal J card. Another really minor thing is all of the sort of weapons here have gradients, and I noticed that Crazy has a gradient for what lightning would look like. So I'm sort of thinking I might use Crazy for that, as well as up here. He has a gradient. This part on Crazy doesn't have a gradient, whereas these ones it does. You can really see it on Cole. But I think I can probably just sort of reuse this sort of color gradient for up there. Now the last thing that we need to do is get the artwork. Here I have the Fire Temple instructions, and I have the Blacksmith Shop instructions. And on the back of the Fire Temple, there's this really nice artwork that comes with JDX holding nunchucks. It's JDX. So what I'm thinking of doing is scanning this in and scanning this in, and then sort of overlaying this on top. And from this picture, we'll get the background from it, and hopefully enough will just sort of crop out that it will be fine. Yeah, I have a lot of scanning to do, so let's get started. So here I've got everything imported into Photoshop, and I'm just sort of setting up to edit everything together. Right here I'm grabbing just sort of the J pictures, and now I'm trying to match them up. This took a lot longer than I sort of thought it was going to be, but I eventually got it. I ended up just taking a very, very small part of his torso there, just because that's really all I needed, and then I put it in and I had to blur it and color correct it in order to make it a little bit more perfect. So that's what you're seeing here. Once that was done, I basically had the artwork and I was just correcting it a little bit more. Now here I'm getting rid of Zane, and one thing I really struggled with on this was sort of keeping the sort of blackout edge around the edge of the picture frame, as well as on some of the text boxes. So I ended up just kind of erasing manually so I could keep as much of the gradient as possible. But then I thought maybe no, I should actually do it the other way. I ended up just sort of trying to match the drop shadow myself, which turned out well, I think. So here I'm trying to sort of line up how long this bar of text should be, and I'm also grabbing the J from the J card and trying to match that up. It wasn't a perfect fit, but then eventually I sort of got it working. And I also wanted to grab the gradient from Crazy, so I ended up sort of tilting the card a little bit, which is not what I ended up doing, but it was a step in the process. I didn't like this, so I went with just sort of using color points and creating a gradient in Photoshop, which is what you're seeing here. This gradient I could reuse in a couple of places throughout the process. So now I'm just matching up the letters, and yeah, I got it looking pretty good, I think. Adding a bit of a drop shadow on the edge there and cleaning up the letters. Here I'm grabbing the gradient again, and I'm going to apply it to the nunchucks over here. This ended up kind of being a little bit tedious to select everything. I thought I was going to also select the shadow, but then again I ended up just not, and then kind of replacing it with the drop shadow myself, just because I didn't really like how it turned out. So I'm cleaning up the shadow here, and then I will add the drop shadow in myself. This took a lot of finagling to get just right, but I think I nailed it. Then I grabbed the lightning symbol from Crazy, but then I figured I should actually just grab it from J, because J has kind of the blue background instead of the yellow. But I just used Crazy to line it up, and that was actually pretty easy. The next thing I did, I grabbed the gradient and I moved it up to the SP 1100 bit again, although I was sort of cleaning up my layers before that. So now I'm cleaning it up and sort of applying it, and I ended up just sort of erasing where the letters were for this. I couldn't really get a good selection and keep the background, and I don't know, a drop shadow wouldn't work super great. I was kind of sick of trying to match drop shadows, so I just did this way, and I think it worked out fine because it's so small that it honestly doesn't matter that much. I grabbed the star from J here, and the last thing to do was sort of fix the levels of things. So I added some bars for that, and I'm copying over the 500 and the numbers and all that. So now we're doing Earth, which I needed to remove one and then move 100 over. So we got that. Ice was kind of a pain because there is sort of that darker gradient in the corner. So I had to kind of just erase around it very specifically. I think in the end I got it, but this part took a little bit of time. Lastly, I needed to do fire, which Crazy had the right amount of fire, so I just dragged it over. And yeah, I just sort of cropped it. I imported a new image of the back of the card so I could have them right next to each other in the same sheet. And then I dragged over my new J card, then put them together, and then cropped it again. And there's the finished product. Well, I have cut it out. I just sort of stuck it together with double-sided tape. So it's not the most ideal. I guess ideally you'd print it on like cardstock and print it double-sided and just have to cut it once. Maybe I'll do that sometime. But yeah, this is our new card, and looking at the old one, it is a much higher resolution. It's funny, when I was editing it, I was a little fearful of how pixelated the end result would end up being, but it actually doesn't look that bad compared to, you know, the other stuff. Like it's pretty good in my opinion. I especially think that the nunchucks came out much better. I bet this is the kind of project that I'll always come back to every couple of years. To try to make a new version. But yeah, I'm really happy with this one. There will be a link to a PDF in the description if you want to print this out and cut it yourself. Then you can go ahead and do that. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. and I will see you in the next one.